Thank you for your interest in consolidating your retirement savings with the CTA 403B plan. On this video, we'll highlight the steps required to move your existing savings to the CTA 403B. Let's begin with an overview of what's required to make this happen. We've broken down the process into 5 steps. Before you do anything else, you'll want to verify what, if any, surrender fees or penalties you will pay if you move your funds. If the surrender fees are too high, it may not be worth it at this time to move your existing funds to CTA until after those surrender fees go away or drop down to something reasonable. Once you've determined there are no surrender fees or you're willing to pay them to move, then it's time to start the process. Step 2 is to determine what type of transaction is required. You need to do this before you gather paperwork because the paperwork needed depends on the type of transaction. After you determine the type of transaction, it's time to gather that paperwork. Once you have it, you'll need to complete it and turn it in for processing. And finally, once your paperwork has been submitted, it'll be important to check on the progress periodically. Now that you have an overview of the process, let's go through each step. The first step is to reach out to the company with your current 403B to ask them to provide you with the amount of surrender fees or penalties if you closed the account and moved it. If there are no penalties, then it's not a problem to move forward. If you do find out there are penalties, then you're going to have to make a decision to see if it's worth it to you. Don't be disappointed, by the way, if there are significant penalties. Normally, year after year, the amount of the surrender fee will go down until it disappears. In the meantime, stop putting new money into this account and keep funding your new CTA account. Eventually, you will be able to move your funds in the future. If you have decided to move your money to CTA, the next step is to understand the paperwork necessary to make it happen. On this page is an overview of what you'll need. In many cases, it starts with approval from the third-party administrator, or TPA, who provides an approval of the transaction. In addition, another form comes from the CTA 403B, letting everyone know we will accept the funds. And finally, the sending company, that is the vendor where your money is now, typically requires distribution paperwork. Now that we have an overview of the parties involved, let's determine what kind of transaction you need to complete. On this page, we show you the 3 types of transactions. What you need to do is to determine which one fits your circumstances. On the following pages, we cover each transaction type in more detail. The exchange transaction is the simplest. If all you're doing is switching from one 403B provider to CTA within the same school district, it's called an exchange. If this is the case, then you'll need to get the TPA approval document from your current district. Everything will happen within that same district, so very easy to complete. Just remember, you're going to complete an exchange transaction. Let's talk about the second type of transaction. If you have a 403B or 457 account with an old employer, that is another school district that you want to move to your new CTA account at your current district, then you're going to be doing a transfer transaction. What's different here is you will need to go back to the old district where your old 403B or 457 is and get the approval from the TPA there. That's because the money will be transferring from your old district's 403B to your current district. The last type of transaction occurs if your old retirement account is somewhere else. Typically, that would be a 401k account or a rollover IRA, or it could be a 403B or 457 that is associated with an employer not connected to school districts. Under those conditions, you'll be completing what's called a direct rollover transaction. In that case, you'll need to go to the old employer to fill out paperwork to approve this transaction. Once again, here's a summary or overview of the 3 types of transactions: an exchange, a transfer, or a direct rollover. Make sure you know for sure which one it is before you start filling out paperwork. Once you have the type of transaction and the paperwork needed, then the next document required is from the CTA 403B. The CTA 403B also needs to approve the transaction. The other parties need to know that CTA will accept the funds from the other party. The good news is we've provided a QR code to the paperwork for you. Just take a picture with your phone and it links to the document you need. You will notice this paperwork is from Aspire Financial. They are the record keeper for the CTA 403B program. Finally, you may need paperwork from the sending or distributing company. Please contact the company with the assets you're planning to transfer and ask them for distribution paperwork. Tell them your plans to move the money and ask them what is required on their part. Some may require signature guarantees or a medallion stamp. However, most do not. At this point, you should have a good idea of what to do for steps 1, 2, and 3. In our next video, we'll provide you with an overview of the paperwork and some tips on how to fill it out. It may seem a bit confusing, but remember why you're doing this: to improve your odds for a better retirement. On average, CTA members are saving a whopping 70% every year on fees once they transfer. That can add up to thousands of dollars of savings and future growth over your career. If you need a little bit of help, you can always reach out. Thanks again for opening a CTA 403B.